Welcome. This is Logan Cockrum with Action Coach Bluegrass in Southern Indiana, and you're listening to the Success Through Action podcast, where we're talking to successful business owners to hear their stories and how they took action to grow their businesses. We are here today with Vern Eswine of the marketing company. For over 40 years, Vern has been active in marketing and service and nonprofit organizations. Mr. Eswine attended Indiana University School of Bank Marketing, the University of Colorado, and Louisiana State University Graduate School of Bank Marketing. And he also attended 2 years at Covenant Seminary, St. Louis, Missouri. Mr. Eswine's been a speaker and instructor for such organizations as SCORE, SBDIC, BAI, and in addition, Mr. Eswine has been active on many boards and committees that include Leadership Southern Indiana as the past president, as well as the past president of Develop New Albany, past chair of Regional Leadership Coalition. And Mr. Eswine currently lives in Georgetown, Indiana with his wife, Donna, both actively involved in local mission work as well as in India and Ghana. Mr. Eswine, pleasure having you on today, and I thank you for taking the time. So Vern, tell me a little bit about the marketing company.
We're focused on brand marketing. That's different than an ad agency. I worked at an ad agency years ago, and the reason I started this company is because I want to learn from an ad agency. It's not negative. That's who they are. They're about production. I get it. A brand marketing firm is focused on developing, building, and maintaining a brand for a company. That means rather than having a client for 2.5 to 3 years, our clients are averaging us 18 plus years with us. That's really our focus. Our focus is on building and growing relationships, not just churning clients. That's who we are.
Interesting thing about you, Vern, and the marketing company is it's been 40 years. How have you stayed relevant in an industry that's changed so much in those 40 years?
I get that question a lot. Our mission statement is on our cards and everything, and it says putting vision into action. And how we explain that to clients, an elevator speech of sorts, is all of our clients know where they want to go. The problem is they just don't know how to get there. Our job is to show them how to get there. So that relates directly back to ourselves. We have to be our own client, and that means who do we want to be in the next 10 years. And so from day one, I've always been one to look out and see what was happening and see what was going on, primarily a lot of times in the East and West Coast, as well as Europe, but mainly East and West Coast, because usually things are going on out there. Usually it takes 6 months to a year to get here in the Midwest. I always loved research. I've been curious about marketing and people from day one. I'm an avid reader, avid researcher, so I like looking at things, risking, trying things. So from the days of me drawing things out with pen and pencil on paper and laying things out for newspaper work, we moved into computers, probably 35 years ago, whenever they started coming available. I had an art director I had to let go, quite frankly, because I told him we were moving into computer-based. I told him I would purchase the computers and I would train it. And he refused to learn. So I had to replace it in order to move forward for the company. Always been testing and trying new things. We developed our first website for a client here in Louisville over 35 years ago. A lot of people say, was the web around 35 years ago? It was. We actually had a client ask us if we could develop a website. And I had a graphic designer who told me he'd never done design websites. But I told him, as a designer myself, I said, you do the design. I have a programmer. The three of us together will load up this website, put it out there, and we did. So it started with that, and then years later, I got into SEO, got into start playing around with social media, and about 10 years ago, started playing around with digital. A lot of times when we talk to our clients, it's a matter of let's do some work together, see if it's going to work. It has to be a good match for both of us. They have to be build trust with us, know that we are here to have their best interest in mind. And once they get that and start seeing the results from our efforts, then they usually stay around, which is our goal.
What's been the biggest challenge that you faced in the past year?
Keeping up, honestly. Business-wise and personal, there's been other things going on, so that's been a little bit rough. But business-wise, honestly, the biggest challenge we have right now is just keeping up. I have a very strong team. Our approach here is team. It's not me. I changed that out over 10 years ago, where it's not just about me and everybody's got to come through me. So we have a strong team here. I think my oldest team member is 30 years old. and my youngest is 23. So we approach it that way. We all have our expertise. Mine is business consulting and solution-based marketing, and I have another one whose expertise is design and tech, and another person who is in content development and design. So, I mean, that's just three of us, but all of us have our unique skill set. Finding team members that fit into that, honestly, is the biggest challenge right now. We're looking for a part-time designer right now at 20 to 30 hours. And many times, if this works out, I bring them on full-time because we'll continue to grow. But finding somebody that, even people in college right now, which we used to do a lot of that. We'd hire an intern, work with them for a couple of years. When they graduated, we just brought them on full-time. Those are hard to find right now.
Kind of piggybacking off that, how do you ensure that your business continues to thrive and grow with all the competition now in the marketing sector?
Oh, that's easy. I mean, it really is. It's easy to say, it's not easy to do. I really, really pride ourselves on over-the-top service. I want our clients to know that they can depend on us. If they need to talk to me over the weekend, they do. I usually try to direct all conversations over the weekend to my wife and I, so our employees can have that time off. That's part of our uniqueness. We're very flexible here. We're not the highest paid, but our pay is competitive. We pay the insurance. It's a family-oriented place. That's the employee side. When it talks to the customer side, we want them to feel like, even though they know that's not the case, we want them to feel like they're our only client. The results on that is what's going to count. I mean, so the service we provide is number one. That's the biggest thing we're after, is build a relationship, expand the relationship. The second thing is the results. There's a lot of companies out there claiming to do what we do. They put brand on their list of services. But if you ask them what is brand on their list of services, they're all production issues. So we want our clients to know that we're experienced in a lot of different areas. 40 years gives us a lot of different avenues. We have a lot of connections and outsources that if we can't do it, we know somebody can. As I started to say earlier, that there's a lot of people claiming to do what we do, but unfortunately, they're not reporting back to their clients. I mean, we've gotten several clients this last year, just because we've shown them, here's the reporting we do, here's the results that we're getting, and here's what we're going to do with this information, and how we're going to use it in the next quarter for your social or your SEO or your digital platform. So they can see we're not just looking at information, but we're using that information to make things better, and more importantly, to drive more leads, drive more revenue. At the end of the day, that's what matters. The client has to be growing. They can have all the impressions and all the click-throughs you can shake a stick at, but if the revenue is not moving, what good is it? And I agree with that as a businessman. I mean, why would you keep me? So for us, it's just like anybody else. We want to see the client growing. And we have a history here of clients that have, that started off with one or two locations, end up with 18 to 20 locations and got sold. And that's honestly what we're here to do. Worst case scenario, long term, if they ever decide to sell and move on, my job is to make sure they get top dollar for that. That's how I see it.
Do you view yourself as kind of an outsourced employee?
Yeah, we've been positioned as an outsource from day one. I worked as an outsource for a year after I left an ad agency and had a non-compete. I had two of my clients we were working on things that were a lot of internal things. I was writing policies and procedures and employee handbooks and repositioning a lot of things for the client. And so two of them hired me. Both of them hired me part-time. So I worked, 3 days a week, 1 week for one client, 2 days a week for the other, and they switched. We did that for a year. And they both offered me positions as vice president of marketing. These were banks. That's where we got our start. And they both offered me positions, but I wanted to try this. This was the fourth company the ad agency I was with that grew. And that was the fourth company in a row that I had grown. And only to find out when the family members saw there was real money now, and when they wanted to come back in. And so I just wanted to try it for myself, and I asked them if they would consider being my first clients, and they did. And so I was with one of those clients for 30 years and another client for 39 years until one sold the 39 year, and the other one went into new management. And some people don't believe in marketing, even though they see the results.
So Vern, you have been in the industry for 40 years. We've kind of talked about the marketing company more so than Vern so far. So can you tell us kind of how obstacles have shaped your success as a business leader, overcoming them?
Obstacles. This can be a rough business. I don't know your audience, and how they'll take some of this stuff, but you're asking about mine, so I'm talking about me, so I'll tell you. Obstacles have proven to be opportunities for us as an organization, for me personally. My wife and I have been very active in missions work in India and in Ghana, but primarily in India. And we see how people live on $1 a day and how they can still live with smiling faces and be thankful and be willing to give to others. And you also know that, I lost a daughter to cancer, my oldest daughter, and when she was 14. A lot of things shape you, change you. But one thing that hasn't changed, and the one thing that is what really keeps this business going, in my opinion, is the faith that my wife and I have in God. And it takes a lot of pressure off a business owner when he knows that all he's got to do is do what he does, and God will provide you what you need. I've never had the desire to be a multi-million-dollar company, having hundreds of employees and all that. I've never been one of those guys. In fact, when the recession hit, we were 11 people in this building, and we were forced to downsize. It's a whole other story. And then when the recession came, we realized that it's still going to be a tough ride. So we decided, as people decided to go to a bigger company, we were just going to let them go. And we were going to work with our own outsourcers that we continue to work with today. So then when the recession came back, everything was, and we were out of that, we really liked the small office atmosphere and fewer employees and more outsourced work. So we're an outsourced, and we believe in outsourcing. So if we can't handle bigger projects, I have 3 or 4 art directors. In fact, 2 of my last art directors I've had here over the last 20 years are still working with me. They're working somewhere else, but they do projects for us. Over Christmas was really kind of neat. We had a couple of our past employees who stopped in here and said some really nice things that you appreciate. But I think just focused on taking care of your people, the people that take care of you. That's the team here. And also, my wife and I feel very strongly that we have what we have, and we've been given that to also help and serve others. By doing so, then God takes care of us. It doesn't mean that it doesn't rain here. It doesn't mean we're not going to face obstacles. That's been proven. But just like anything else, it's not what you go through, it's how you come out of it. It's how you deal with it. That's what really makes the difference.
So just to reiterate, you view obstacles as an opportunity?
Yeah, years ago, I did a lot of crisis management for clients that were emerging or in acquisition mode or being threatened by competition. And I found it interesting that the immediate fear that was brought on to especially employees was one of losing their job, to the point that their whole actions was going to help them lose their job. And one of the things I proved to them is I could put a whole series of words on one side of a board, like war and divorce, and what we all usually term negative words, right? But in all those occasions, there is positive reactions to that could come out of that. It sounds horrible, but sometimes things that are bad that happen to us can be used to help you grow in the future. Part of that is the first step is looking at your own attitude before you move forward. If you feel like you're going to fail, you're going to. And if you're running in fear, you're going to run the wrong direction. I've always tried to be very careful here of just thinking through things, praying through things, and then the decisions come from there before just reacting.
We had a pretty long discussion about the role of mentorship, and I don't think I had a chance to ask this, but maybe I did. How have you benefited from mentorship yourself in your professional life?
Honestly, I wouldn't be in a lot of positions, wouldn't have met a lot of people. In my business life, I had men who saw things in me I didn't see in myself and put me in front and provided opportunities that, I'll be honest, I wasn't sure I could pull it off, okay? But it did, because they knew it could. And so I had to really lean in on trust in them. They actually knew me better than I knew myself, because sometimes we think we know ourselves, and not as much as we think we do. Sometimes that's driven by what we want to be and what we want to look like, or what others think they look like. But there has to be some honesty inside that none of us are perfect. But we're also capable more than we ourselves are allowed ourselves to risk. That's one of my favorite statements. I've always said that the biggest risk is not taking one. I've always loved that, because that's true. So throughout my life, I've placed myself and been put in situations, business-wise, that we could have been put out of business real easy. if it failed. We could have, but it's always brought us the next step. And it's proven that it doesn't matter how large a company you are, how many people you employ. Creative is not driven by the numbers. And that's what makes you unique. There's a whole lot of agencies out there, ad agencies and so-called branding firms. So what makes us all different, my team, is really just right here and here. That's what makes us different. And we execute that, and our focus, like I said earlier, is on servicing the client, first and foremost, and taking care of them. And by doing that, we establish the value of ourselves to them, and then they retain us longer. Personally, as I said earlier, I lost my daughter and almost lost the business. But that makes you rethink things or reposition things. And the one thing that drives us in this organization that I also think is unique for a lot of companies is that everything we do is built on planning. So our social media is written 3 months in advance and designed and scheduled. Most of our clients, I think all of them, but maybe one at this point, have either quarterly or full year action plans in place for them this year and a budget. We get hired, in some cases, to work alongside an internal marketing director. In some cases, I'm the marketing director. That's something I learned when I was with those two clients I talked about earlier, is that the first year as a marketing director, everybody thought I was a whiz kid because all these creative and new things I was coming up with. The second year, I was so busy managing that stuff. By the third year, management was looking at me and said, what happened to all the cool stuff? Because I was still one guy, and now I'm trying to do everything. And I had to start finding some help. With us, I walk in the door with an entire team. So more and more people, especially since COVID, I think that's why we've grown so much, is people are looking for an outsource that they can trust that's had proven success in growing companies. And I can tell you story after story with us right now that they started with one location and now they've got 10. And they started with one truck and now they've got 18. Story after story, and that's what drives us.
You attribute a lot of your success to your mentors. How did you find them? And then once you found them, why do you think they were a good fit?
I'll be honest with you. I think they found me. Over the years, I've had a few people. I've got a young man right now, I told you that I'm working with. He asked me over the holidays if I would do that, and I would agree with that. But I think sometimes when people want to be mentored, I think they're looking for an easy way, a fast way to jump ahead. And through my time and the people that mentored me, I wasn't looking for a quick fix. I was just really caught up in the whole issue that, for me, is how do you see this in me? I didn't see it. And why did you put me here? And we had a lot of discussions on that, on both the ministerial side. That's why I was 2 years in seminary before my daughter died. But there was people in the ministry that saw, you need to be doing these things. I think people today, when it comes to being mentored, and they come to you and they're looking for it, because I've had several people that I've done that with, but then within usually 2-3 months, they drop off and disappear. As being mentored, I was hungry. These men had experience and they had access to people and places that I didn't even know existed in some cases. And seeing that, it just made me hungry. Not just to see what I could do in these scenarios, but interested in them enough to know more about them and why they were recommending me. It was really humbling, quite frankly.
It's one of those like platitudes in business where mentorship's important, but when I talk to people that are successful, they share that in common. They've had a good mentor, but it seems to be more of an organic process just from them putting themselves in the right position. It's not a means to an end.
Getting a mentor is a bridge, okay? And as soon as I cross over it, I'm there. It's not. At least it wasn't for me. And I've had several people have come to me and said they wanted me. And I could told this young man that during the holidays when we had some coffee, he said, would you consider this? And I said, yeah, but here's the thing. I'm not 100% understanding of what you're looking for. So this direction right now initially is going to have to be driven by you and your needs. And then I'll see how I can fit into, and it's just like everything else. If you're trying to build a relationship, mentoring should be a relationship, something that you're working alongside each other so that the mentee is learning something from the mentor that they can apply and use in their own business or personal life. That's a give and take on both sides. And the better they get to know each other, the more the growth happens. It's no different than growing businesses, in my opinion. There's a honeymoon time, and then there's a time when you're going to have some bumps in the road and things like that. But you're looking for the long-term relationship of, I'm looking for advice, I'm looking for guidance, I'm looking for access to bigger clients. Whatever the reason is, you have to find out where it is that. What is it that you think that I can help you with? But for a lot of people that have come up to me and said that to me, after 2-3 coffees, they just kind of disappear. And it gets to the point that I feel like I'm the one that's pursuing them when they're the ones that came to me. In the current case, that's not been the case. The good thing is I've known this person for a long time, since he was a youngin'. So there's a little bit more relationship there. And I know what he's gone through in his personal life and where he is now. So a little bit different story.
You're talking about building relationships, but there's also another thing that's kind of in vogue right now, and it's true, is networking, the value of building relationships and networking with other business leaders. And do you have any specific example of how you've used your relationships and network to help grow your business?
Networking is a good thing. We've all heard it's who you know. That's still true today. It's who you know. So network is important. It's still important. In fact, I've got a seminar somewhere back that I used to do on networking, because most people go into networking for the whole purpose is they want to meet you so I can sell you. Everybody's a client, and that's not the truth. Everybody's not a client. Well, they may be a client, but they may not be a good fit for a client. So just going out and meeting people and grabbing a bunch of business cards and then start emailing them and pitching them constantly. It's like I've asked people when I've done networking before, seminars, I said, have you ever been to a networking event where you knew the one guy in the room that every time you ever talked to him, it was all about him and what he could do for you? Have you ever met somebody like that? Everybody raises their hand. I said, so you go to your next networking event, and there in the middle of the room, there he stands, looking at you. Where do you go? Do you go towards him, or do you go away from him? You go away from him. Why is that? Because he's networking, and it's all about him. If you're a service business, you're a service business, I'm in a service business, the key word is service. Not to yourself, but to the person you're trying to work with, you're trying to get to know. I don't understand a lot of people that the pitch is always on. And you can tell it pretty quick because they ask us, so how you been doing today? Well, I've been doing great. Well, I've been, and there it goes. That's the last question they're going to ask you about you. They're talking about themselves. And I see that everywhere. I don't network as much as I used to because the platforms we're using here are driving business to my doorstep. But I do it, as you know. You saw me out at the event. And I do that several times a year just, again, to get out and listen to people and watch things and research and see what's going on out there. If you really want to get the most out of it, networking should not be about just what you get, but how you can help others. One of the reputations we have with clients here is that if I don't know anybody that does that, but if anybody knows somebody that might do that, it's Vern. And they send them to me. And that client is now feeling comfortable that I will help their friend or their client. And if there's any way I can, I'm not making any money out of it. I'm helping them because I can and because my client asked me to, and that's what they expect from me, because that's our relationship. So it's about serving. It's not about getting all the time. And too many people in networking events, that's what it's about.
I think another thread that's common among people that are successful, it's not always the case, but for a vast majority, I would think I'd be comfortable saying this, is that I could tell first time I met you is that you seem like a very genuine person. And I think the guy that you're describing at the networking event is not coming across as genuine. So I think that's what you're essentially saying, is that you have to be genuine in your attempt to network. Which brings me to another question for you is, what's the number one way you feel that you've gone about building and nurturing relationships with other business leaders?
Being honest with them, that's it. I mean, honesty is a quality that's kind of sometimes hard to come by these days. You hear that word a lot and say, well, let me be honest with you. Then the next words come out, they're not really being honest with you. My clients, especially when I work with them, they'll shoot me they'll write something or to develop something, and they'll say, I need you to look at this and tell me what you think. They know exactly what they're going to get. They want me to protect them from themselves. So if what they're writing and what they're putting together is something they want to say, it's kind of like that's now the PR hat on them. That's the corporate communications guy who's saying, you can't say that, or you can't say it this way. Or, I had a client the other day that said, I'm sending out this letter to clients. And the first 3 lines use the term, you need to do this. Now, this is sending to potential businesses that they're trying to work with. You need to do this and you need to do that. Now, as a business owner, how would you like to be told by somebody you don't know what you need to have? Most of the businesses I work with, no, that's where they're like, turn the switch off, I'm gone. It's healthy to be hungry. It's healthy to want a healthy business and a profitable business. There's nothing wrong with that. But doing it in fear and doing it in such a way of urgency that every client, every person you meet has to be your next client, that's not a good place to be. And I see too many businesses that do that. And part of the reasons they do that, and it's one of the reasons that small businesses have failed, this has not changed, and the statistics of how quickly small businesses fail is because they have no plan and no thought process. Remember I said earlier, all of our businesses that we work with have a corporate plan, an action plan throughout the year, and a budget. We know where we're going, what we're doing, how to expect. The importance of that, as we go through that through the year, we start making notes and see what worked, what didn't work. This was supposed to be in March, but we had to do it in June. You start getting things down and you start finding consistency. That's what customers are looking for. They're looking for someone that has consistency. Being in business for 40 years has been consistent. Okay. And that interests people, I think. But we've had our own plan, our own thought process. And we've grown by using and doing the things that we tell our customers to do. That say, this is what we recommend for you. The honesty part, the integrity part, the genuine part has to be real. For me, I've got trust in a much higher power than myself to be able to do this. So that's what makes me content. Others don't have that. I'm not going to go into preaching, but that is a difference. When you start talking about networking and growing and integrity and being honest and genuine, it has to come really from an inside thing. It's all not about me. I've got a service business, and that means to serve others. And by serving others, it means they're in front of me. I take care of them first. You can talk to anybody on my team here. We never talk money here. We just don't. We talk about relationships. We started this whole thing off about how do we compete or how are we going to grow this year. It's no different than anything else. It's about providing better service than anybody in our industry.
Well, Vern, it's been a great conversation so far. Usually how I like to end these is I kind of think about the person a little bit, and then I throw a curveball question at you to end. Okay. I hope you like this. If you could go back to an 18-year-old Vern, what's the one thing you would tell him?
Oh, gosh. That is a curveball. Number one, the 18-year-old Vern is not the Vern you see today, for sure. My hair was a lot longer than what it is today, a lot longer. My head wasn't in the same place, and it was all about Vern. And so part of it would be I'd probably kick myself in the butt, quite frankly, and say exactly that. It's not about you. It's not about you. And the sooner you learn that in your life, the easier your life is going to be. That would probably be what I tell myself.
Well, hey, Vern, I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me today. I learned a lot, and I hope our viewership does too, and I hope the best for you in 2023.
Well, same to you, Logan, and I appreciate you giving me a call and setting this up.
To everyone who tuned into this episode, thanks for listening to the Success Through Action podcast. Make sure to take action, and I'll see you next time.